Ho, ho, ho! Is this thing on? Mic check. One sleigh, two sleigh. That's right. I've got a podcast now. Stories, jokes, and some serious North Pole nonsense. Santa Has a Podcast is out now at santahasapodcast.com. Ho, ho, ho!
Support American jobs while standing up for your values. OldGloryDepot.com brings you conservative pride on premium, made-in-USA gear. Don't settle. Wear your patriotism proudly. Visit OldGloryDepot.com today.
I say this every election cycle, and I'll say it again. The 2024 political field was intense, so don't get left behind in 2025. If you're running for office, the first thing on your to-do list should be securing your name on the web. With a yourname.vote domain from GoDaddy.com, you'll stand out and make your mark. Don't wait. Get yours today.
Welcome to another episode of Breaking Battlegrounds with your host Sam Stone. Chuck Warren is not here today because we are over at the Arizona State University for Gen Z, the Future of American Politics, hosted by the ASU Center for American Institutions. And we're joined by two great friends of the program, Carolyn Downey, columnist for National Review and host of Locked In, and Daniel DiMartino, fellow at the Manhattan Institute and a PhD candidate in economics at Columbia University. Carolyn, Daniel, thank you so much. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Very happy.
So I'm going to just throw this out there. I'm Gen X. Scarily, by the time most people are listening to this, I will have turned 50 the day before this airs.
Oh,
so,
wow.
yeah, little scary.
Happy early birthday.
Is it? Is it, though? I don't know if this is one you celebrate or not. I think
so.
I think you got to be like...
Half a century.
You
Yeah.
made it, right? Well, considering I grew up with like the ultimate Gen X lifestyle in the middle of nowhere.
Where?
So we were outside Lake Placid, New York in the 70s and 80s, about an hour and a half south of Montreal.
Wow.
Lived on a dairy farm. We played, I don't even know, this is definitely not politically correct in this day and age, but we played cowboys and Indians with BB guns and real bows and arrows.
Right.
And it's all fun and games until someone puts an arrow in your leg, just saying.
Ooh.
So true.
Yeah. But see, and I'm laughing because I see these reactions, right? This is, in some ways, it was like the ultimate Gen X lifestyle. We were the generation that our parents were like, just get out there and have some fun and let us know if you...
Latchkey kids, a little bit?
Latchkey, but when you're in the country, it kind of goes further. It's like, did you die today? No, we're good.
You had acres to migrate on.
Yes. Yeah, I think one time we actually clear-cut about 2.5 acres and back in the forest to build forts.
Wow.
Do you know what's funny? My parents are Gen X too. I'm from Venezuela, and so my parents, even then, you're right, they have that more of a free-range culture. My mom, at 12 years old, a woman, my grandparents bought her a mini motorcycle. She was running on a motorcycle at 12. Are you crazy? I wouldn't let a boy, even less a girl, at 12 years old, to be on a motorcycle. Yes, I make sex differences, okay? But also like it's crazy.
But yeah, like free-range chickens. You guys were just let to run wild.
We were the ultimate free-range chickens, and I think generations after sort of got reined in because of us. Like people looked at us and said maybe that was a little too far. In the parenting, you could kind of see a change in the parenting where by the time the millennials came along, parents were much more actively engaged in their children's lives, and that's continued to change.
To a fault sometimes.
Yeah. I didn't want to take that too far, but yeah.
Yeah.
What do people like me need to know about Gen Z? Where do we need to start to understand Gen Z?
Well, since you introed with this hook about parenting styles, I think it's important to note that the heyday of gentle parenting came about for the youngest cohort of Gen Z. So Gen Z is 18 to 29 years old. We're at the older end, so you could call us Zillennials because we're almost millennials.
I'm 26, she's 27.
Oh yeah, okay. So not quite millennials. We still identify as Gen Z, but the younger cohort, they're the ones whose parents were bubble wrapping them a little bit too much, insulating them from the harshness of the world, maybe to a fault, so they didn't maybe encounter that much adversity, and I think that's why you're seeing partially why Gen Z is so risk averse. They're scared of a lot of things. including dating. So there's a romantic recession that's been reported among Gen Z. Gen Z is the generation that's least likely to date, also have sex. Like it's across the board. They're
Drink less.
Drink less.
Now,
yeah.
is that changing now with Gen Alpha coming along?
It's a good question. And I don't know because.
Alpha shouldn't be drinking; they're underage.
Yeah, right.
Okay,
But I don't
we've
know.
already discussed too much of my childhood to go there, but okay.
Well, they would be under 18 years old.
Right.
So I think the jury's still out on how they'll develop. One thing's for sure, Gen Alpha, I mean, they were experiencing this, but maybe to a less degree. The COVID learning loss during the very draconian school shutdowns in mostly blue states. You know, Gen Z bore the brunt of that, and it's showing up in their academic outcomes or lack thereof. They're heading into the job market now, the older end, unable to communicate properly with hiring managers. 51% of hiring managers said that, you know, the Gen Z candidates they've encountered can't articulate themselves very well. There's been stories of Gen Z candidates bringing parents into interviews.
I have actually had that happen to me.
No, you're kidding.
Yeah, no.
Wow.
That was the first time was in 2021 when I was doing an interview for a candidate campaign position, for a comms position, and the candidate walked into the room, and I'm looking at them going, "You look about 40 years older than I expected you to look."
Oh my gosh.
And then the woman introduced herself as the mother of and the girl
I would be so ashamed.
Yeah.
As the son.
And that doesn't necessarily help buck the stereotypes, which is that they need to be handheld through a lot of
that
big,
was disconcerting from my
milestones.
Did you hire
perspective.
her?
Yes.
Of course not. No,
Yeah.
literally.
No, but I wanted you to say it.
Well,
Yeah.
but I literally told the mother, I had to say, listen, I'm not going to interview your daughter. You shouldn't be here.
Right.
Like, this is not appropriate. So yeah.
Yeah.
As we say in Gen Z, that's a red flag.
That's a red flag.
Thank you. I am way behind the lingo also. So
Oh, we're going to give you a really big dose. Here's another one for you, crashing out. So the fact that Gen Z feels the need to bring a guardian into an interview, I mean, I'd call that crashing out. It's like, you got to be independent here, buddy. You know, this is your chance to prove yourself, right? Okay, leave the nest.
Right.
You don't need a chaperone. But, you know, when we translate this to the political context, Gen Z is difficult not to crack, especially because you have to divide it along gendered lines, because Gen Z men are going in a completely different direction than Gen Z women, who are the most progressive group in American history. Gen Z men are increasingly conservative, and that exacerbates, I think, the courtship that they're not doing,
right.
you know, because they're increasingly not seeing eye to eye on politics, on priorities. Gen Z men are going back to church.
Did you see that poll about what's your priority in life? Getting married, having children, a career.
The NBC poll?
Yeah.
Oh,
between
yeah.
Men versus women. And shockingly, the men ranked having a family first.
Yeah.
And the women ranked having a family 10th.
And for
Yeah.
the first time in history, as my understanding is, that poll has been done in some form or another for many, many decades, and that's always been, women have always ranked marriage and family higher than men have
Yes.
as a priority until this most recent poll.
Yes, so I think that's a reflection of this. You know, Caroline mentioned that, you know, parents take care of them and it's more of a coddled generation, but it's coddled in the physical sense, not in the online sense. And I think that's where a lot of parents lost control of the kids, right? Because the parents don't know what's going on online, and that's where a lot of these problems are happening. Problems of online addictions, you know, we talked about before in the event, pornography, radicalization, gambling, you know, so many things that online that the older generations doesn't even know happens because they're not aware. You want to say something?
Well, no, you're saying something that I think is incredibly profound, and I hadn't really thought it through before, but in certain sense, for us as Gen X, the outdoors was the Wild West. I mean, it was
where the danger lied.
Where the danger lied. And now
gonna
this is
kidnap
being
the kid in
reversed.
The Wild West is online.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, honestly, the outside is not what we have to be afraid of. It's the
And if anything, by the way, when you were growing up, the crime and the risk on the outdoors was much higher than
Much
when we were
higher.
growing up.
Right,
We
right.
grew up, our childhood was in the period of lowest crime in U.S. history.
Right.
Yeah.
The danger did not lie outside.
Right.
It lied in the screen.
Pretty tranquil.
One of the worst things I think that this country ever did was start putting the faces of missing children on milk bottles, because it told parents that this was a everyday occurrence, that children were being
there's a
taken
million missing children. Like I've seen some stats that it's like, this is impossible. Look, I mean, this is the size of the U.S. population. There's no way there's like hundreds of thousands of missing children. I just don't believe it.
It was so panic-inducing. I mean, and then there was also the satanic panic that a lot of, I think it was Gen Z's parents were really worried about. You know, during the demonic forces are taking over America and things like that. But
maybe that's true.
I mean, it probably is in a sense. Like, if you consider cultural Marxism demonic, which I do,
I agree.
Then 100%, 100%.
Yeah.
But to his point about all the dark forces online, I mean, there's not really a lot that's going to moderate, right? There's no chaperone online, and so if you fall down these rabbit holes as a young guy or even a young girl, you know, that's another phrase, brain rot. You're going to be dealing with some brain rot, and I mean, talk about pornography. It literally mentally recalibrates your brain. I think a lot of what young people are consuming, especially during the more formative years when their cognitive development is not even done, is they're getting some poison online, and that's also why you saw gender ideology take such a chokehold, is because it was at the most impressionable age for these young people, where they weren't even at the age of reason, at the age of consent.
Now we have the schools pushing that too, which is a big danger. But also you mentioned gender polarization. It's not just in the United States. None of this is only in the U.S. Actually, this is a global phenomenon, which is why I think that it has to do with factors that have nothing to do with our government and everything to do with the technological forces. How come in South Korea, young guys voted for the right-wing party in record numbers and the young women voted for the left-wing party? In Germany, the young men were voting for AfD, the far-right party, and the young women for Die Linke, the communist party. The whole joke was that you're going to have a couple of like a fascist and a communist. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact is coming back. And that's the new couples in Germany, essentially.
Yeah.
That gets in one of my pet peeves with history, is the rewriting of post-World War II history to make Nazism a right-wing ideology, when it was expressally a left-wing
I was joking
ideology,
about
right?
that.
National socialism.
National
socialism.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's one of the really interesting things is if you go right now and look at the Nazi Party platform from 1937, it is almost identical to the Democrat Party platform from 2024.
Yeah.
I mean, there really very little room in between them if you just remove the stuff about Jews, which have they removed it?
No.
Yeah,
Which is not coming back.
That's not coming back.
It seems like they've embraced kind of the whole platform.
Right.
But getting back to the Gen Z stuff, we have just about a minute left here, and then we're going to be coming back with more from both of you here in a minute. Carolyn Downey, columnist for National Review and host of Locked In, and editor-in-chief of Conservator Magazine. I haven't read Conservator Magazine. What do we got there?
Oh yeah, it's my side project. So essentially, it is a lifestyle brand and magazine that hopes to counter Vogue, Glamour, Elle, Vanity Fair, which have fantastic aesthetics, beautiful to read, glossy pages,
great photographers,
great fashion, but they glamorize ugly ideas, and that's anything from legitimizing infidelity and cheating to telling women that they should make sure to follow your horoscopes and maybe go to a witch if you need any kind of moral guidance in your life.
We'll let that be the last word for this segment. We're coming back with more on Breaking Battlegrounds right here in a moment.
All right, imagine this. You're running for president. Yes, president. What's the first thing you need? Well, besides the $1 million fundraising, you need to secure your web domain. You need your name, .vote. Easy to remember, straight to the point, and a direct link to your campaign. No, but seriously, whether you're getting out to vote or convincing people that yes, you can fix the potholes on Main Street, a .vote domain helps you stand out. It's not just a website, it's a call to action. Head over to GoDaddy.com or name.com, type in your name, .vote, and boom, you're ready to make a lasting impact. Get started today with your .vote web address.
All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. We're continuing on now from Arizona State University and the Gen Z Future of American Politics Conference hosted by the ASU Center for American Institution, joined by two great friends of the show, Carolyn Downey, columnist for National Review, and Daniel Martino, fellow at the Manhattan Institute. So we're talking Gen Z earlier. As we were talking in the break, you brought up, Caroline, something. I'm just going to jump right into the well here with these groypers. And then Daniel, there's sort of a counter on the left. It seems like these pockets of wild extremism have been baked in or brought into both parties, and I don't know where it comes from. Like, where does that originate?
Well, I think that the far-right version, the Groyper version, came because of the left-wing version that came first.
Reactionary.
It's a reactionary portion. It's because of the feminism, or really radical feminism, right? It all started at the college campuses where the white men were at the fault of everything, right? And so obviously people have a right to be upset about that. And then the counter was that now we have this movement of young, mostly guys, who are, blaming the Jews for everything and the immigrants and people who are not white. It's an actual and perverting Christianity, right? Because anti-Semitism goes against the teachings of the Catholic Church.
Well, and perverting the idea, I think, of America too, which is that we welcome everybody of every faith and every color who embraces being an American.
Well, so just to add, just also to clarify to what Daniel was saying, is the technical origins of Groyperism was actually during the peak season of Turning Point USA, as it was really building its empire 5-10 years ago. And what it was were these activists who were showing up to ambush essentially question and answers during speeches at Turning Point conferences.
Especially Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro.
Yes.
They also harassed Ben Shapiro many times, I remember.
They did. And what these guys...
I remember that a little bit with Nick Fuentes from
Yes.
2019, 2020
That's
era.
where he started. That's where he really got to start. And they asked questions that would essentially declare that they were the true right. They were the true right wing, and that the Turning Point model and Charlie Kirk, which...
They always held an alternative CPAC during CPAC. They
Yeah.
held an
Yeah.
alternative PAC in the same hotel on purpose.
Yes.
Yeah. Which...
Right. So there's always been, talking about turf war, now there's a turf war because in Charlie's absence after the tragic assassination, there's a lot of people trying to compete for his viewers and his market share. But the turf war was even going on before. I mean, Nick Fuentes, who's the head of the Groypers, and Charlie Kirk had a bitter feud for many years, and it was good because Charlie Kirk was the moderating, stabilizing
the bulwark
force
against that sort of extreme ideology.
Yes, and his prescriptions for young men, because let's be real, most of Nick Fuentes' followers are young men, was not no marriage, or Nick Fuentes has abandoned marriage and abandoned women altogether, and as well as the Jewish people who are the boogeyman. Again, here we go again. Never forget. Apparently, it was short-lived. But Charlie said, no, it's actually the opposite. You are extremely misguided. Nick, you claim to be this devout Catholic, but if you were really a devout Catholic, you would not be villainizing, first of all, this group.
That's right.
That's
No, it's absolutely wrong. I'll say the first time I came across this, I was a senior in college. This was 2019. And I had a new roommate. We had switched. My other roommates had graduated earlier, and so I had one semester left. Anyway, this new guy, freshman, black guy, and I come into the living room, and he's listening to a Nick Fuentes video. And I research it, what it is, and I hear him speaking, and I'm like, I'm not going to tell you my roommate's name, but I tell him, hey, man, I just looked this guy up, and he hates black people, right? I was telling this, and he's black. I'm like, but, I think they actually shared the anti-Semitism, and that's really why. But then as soon as I watched some of his videos, I saw him joking about the Holocaust, and I'm like, I didn't understand the appeal. And I never really understood where anti-Semitism came from. So for me, it was a very puzzling thing, but very fringe. I wasn't very worried about it. Now I am a little more worried about it, I will say, because I've seen it much more pop up, especially the anti-Semitism on events that I do on college campuses. Now I'm being asked about Israel all the time. I don't talk about Israel. It's not my topic. I talk about socialism. I talk about immigration.
Right.
And now I'm like asked about Israel.
Yeah.
And asked, and I've had, honestly, even anti-Semitic incidents in personal life, and I'm not Jewish,
Yeah.
of people thinking I'm Jewish.
It's a preoccupation. It's a new preoccupation of a lot of young people on the left and the right.
Yeah.
And I think that goes to your point about they're searching for a scapegoat to somehow explain away everything. It's like, okay, we've tried that, and we've been through this game before, and it ends in genocide, and which you're denying. You're denying ever happened. So, I mean...
But it would have been good if it did.
But it would have been good if it did, is how they think. Yeah.
I mean, to me, I think it's an interesting psychological phenomenon, right? That someone would be attracted to the ideas and the thoughts of someone who clearly hates them, whether it is a black guy who's following Nick Fuentes or these LGBTQ plus folks.
Who follow the Palestine stuff.
Are,
You're
yeah,
right.
They're,
the Queers for Palestine. That
right.
was hilarious.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, congratulations. You're trying to be friends with people who would stone you to death at the first opportunity. In this case, he's following your former roommate, following a guy who would like to see him deported for the color of his skin. This is a bizarre sort of psychological twist where people are lining themselves next to this. What is the psychology behind that?
Well, it's also sad because, like, unfortunately, the Jew hatred and the hatred of, I guess, a lot of different groups is packaged in an entertaining way, and I think this guy is very noxious, but a lot of people find him entertaining.
Well, he does have many funny clips. I mean, objective, yeah.
There are a lot of awful people in history who are great
things.
in front of a camera. I mean, it just is what it is.
Chavez, the dictator of Venezuela, has many funny clips, and he's an evil man.
He is funny, he is a funny guy, and he's an evil guy. All right, we have just 1 minute left. Last thoughts. How do you see Gen Z taking on this challenge of stepping up into leadership?
Well, I would say, I think my concern is the decline in religiosity, the lack of community. I think that's really what drove this, that people feel a part of a community, people feel part of something, both in the Palestine stuff, far left, and on the far right.
People are seeking unity.
Yes, they're seeking something. They're seeking meaning, purpose. And so I hope that the answer to this is people find purpose in a good way. Right? In family, in religion.
In positivity.
And Charlie Kirk
We
agreed with
need
that.
to promote optimism, not pessimism. That's what we need.
And those things prevent radicalization.
Absolutely. I think that, and Charlie's message of communication, of continuing to talk and to have those dialogues, I think is very tough without him here right now, and hopefully people will step up into that space, including people like yourselves who are doing important work to step in and help further this narrative. So thank you both again. We always love having you on the program, and it is great to see both of you in person.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
So thank you. We'll look forward to having you back here in the near future.
Thank you.
Old Glory Depot isn't just a website. It's a movement. Featuring unapologetically conservative shirts and gear, we're proud to deliver 100% American-made products. From premium materials to bold designs, every purchase supports American jobs and celebrates our country. Show your pride, support your values, and shop oldglorydepot.com because patriotism never goes out of style.
All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. Our next guest up today, Ben Wieder, is an investigative reporter in McClatchy's Washington Bureau and for the Miami Herald. He worked previously at the Center for Public Integrity and State Line, and he is, frankly, leading a lot of the coverage on the Epstein files and all the disclosures that are coming from that right now. Follow him on X at Ben B. Wieder.
Ben, so Kimberly Strassel of the Wall Street Journal had this joke. TMZ and the National Enquirer walked into a D.C. bar. Fall in love, have a baby, a scandal fest for the ages, which Congress delivers. What is everybody missing about the Epstein story in this tawdry tale? Go ahead.
The remarkable thing about the Epstein story is I think it shows, unfortunately, the degree to which, power, the perception of power, money will cause, otherwise seemingly rational people to make terrible decisions about who they spend time with. And, it's almost like if you have a lot of money, if you have proximity to famous, powerful people will sort of look past any number of misdeeds. And it doesn't get more stark than with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, this is a guy whose crimes are horrific. And by the time many people in the most recent batch of emails that were released were communicating with him, it was known. I mean, this was not a secret. You can make an argument if you're talking about his, Jeffrey Epstein's communication with President Trump or with former President Bill Clinton, that, much of their relationship preceded criminal charges against him. Mm-hmm. They might not have known. Listen, I think we have a sense that they knew that he was a guy who was surrounded by women and some of them on the younger side, but they might not have really known. I mean, no one's necessarily out there checking IDs. But once you get to 2009, which is where the emails start that were recently released, it's out there. This guy is now a registered sex offender. This guy is now pleaded guilty. And even if the charges he's pleaded guilty are kind of watered down based on what he was accused of, I mean, one of them was, prostitution with a child. So there's no confusion about who you're dealing with at this point, and yet it doesn't stop people.
Right.
And
if he didn't have money, they would have avoided him.
100%.
It's all this is all money.
There's the there's this like joke, classy if it's if rich people do it, trashy if poor people do
right.
it. If
it's like day drinking. It's like day drinking.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly. If Epstein's living in like a trailer park, no one's going to touch him with a 10-foot pole. This is the neighborhood sex offender that everyone's putting up flyers and saying, avoid this guy at all costs. But he's not. He's living in mansions across the world. And so everyone's like, hey, can you introduce me to your friends? Can I come to your party? I mean, it's just such a stark difference. And that's why I think it's so essential. And I think that's a point that can't be said enough about this most recent release, which is, so many of the relationships, no one wants to claim now that they were friends with Jeffrey Epstein. Everyone wants to say, oh, as soon as I knew, I cut the guy off. But once you see these emails, you can't say that anymore.
Yeah,
if you're Larry Summers, former Treasury Secretary, you can't say that.
Ben, that's one of the things that's been most amazing in all of this, especially the lead up to the passage of the bill and the start of the release of these files, is a lot of the people who were screaming the loudest to have these files released, their names are there. Like, did they really just think it wasn't going to happen? That there was so much on other people that they would be protected? Like, Hakeem Jeffries asked for money, as I understand, asked for money for the guy after 2009.
It is wild. I mean, he was obviously, on the one hand, there were a lot of politicians who started, giving back his money. But, you think about, the relationship he had with the congresswoman from the Virgin Islands, Stacey Plaskett, who was happily taking money from him, and not just taking money, taking guidance on her conduct in Congress. After that, and there's a lot of questions. Is there any way
she did not know about his background?
I think you'd have to be pretty ignorant. I'll put it this way: I would hope that any person who is elected to serve in Congress has an ability to perform a basic Google search.
I question whether that's true. Unfortunately.
No, that's a fair point. But no, I mean, this guy, it was known, and he had issues in the Virgin Islands too.
Right.
And he was able to skate through them.
Well, who knows the depth of the problems he had on the Virgin Islands? Who knows what those local police and judicial folks know about him that never came out? I mean, it's a small community. People talk.
It's a small community, and someone with the kind of money that Epstein had could just bend it to its will. I mean, we know about some of the economic benefits he got down there. I mean, he was basically able to kind of run the show. He bragged in certain cases about, he could basically get people through airport security. He sort of had his own private as line for airport security that, no one else had to worry about. I mean, he was able to do whatever he wanted in the Virgin Islands. And, the Virgin Islands retrospectively sued him and claimed all these, these things that he had done wrong. But it was, at that point he was dead, and it was easy to go after him. Once he was alive, I mean, this was a guy who they saw as someone who could bring endless amounts of money to the island.
Right.
Unbelievable. We're going to be continuing with more from Ben Wieder here in just a moment, folks. Follow him on X at Ben B. Wieder. And if you're not already, make sure you go to breakingbattlegrounds.vote and get signed up for our podcast portion. You'd never want to miss that. Always great content there. We are coming right back.
Sam and I are always talking about being prepared, whether it's hurricanes in Florida, earthquakes in California, flooding in Arizona, or supply chains disruptions.
Exactly, Chuck. When pharmacies shut down, it does not matter how tough you are, you still need access to critical medicine.
That's why we trust Jace Medical. The Jace case comes with 5 life-saving antibiotics and key over-the-counter meds, so you're covered when things get disrupted.
And Jace goes beyond just the Jace case. They also offer first aid kits, daily prescriptions, and long-term nutrition with Jace Pantry. Don't wait for the next hurricane warning or natural disaster. Take control of your health and peace of mind today.
Visit jace.com and use code FUTURE at checkout for $10 off your order. That's FUTURE at JASE.com.
In today's digital world, standing out is more important than ever. Whether you're running for office, leading a cause, or hosting a vote for the cutest pet in town, you need a web domain that's simple, memorable, and action-oriented. You need a .vote web domain. It's clear, impactful, and establishes a lasting presence for your campaign. Don't wait. Head to GoDaddy.com or name.com, type in your name.vote, and get started today. Because after all, every pet deserves a web address that's as special as they are.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds with the host Chuck Warren. I'm Sam Stone. Our guest on right now, Ben Wieder, investigative reporter for McClatchy's Washington Bureau and for the Miami Herald, worked previously at the Center for Public Integrity and State Line. Follow him on X at Ben B. Wieder.
Did you ever watch 30 Rock, Ben? With Tina Fey?
I did.
Okay. Remember the line where she's talking to Jenna, who's the high maintenance star, and she said, the worst part about this, Jenna, is you proved Jack Donaghy right. And I sort of feel this whole thing has sort of the Tom Cruise movie Eyes Wide Shut feel to it, where everybody who says there's a deep, corrupt state running this country, and they're not far off to a degree. At least they all pal around with each other, right? So explain to us the relationship with reporters, because I have found this to be just sort of odd. I know a lot of reporters, we're not bowling together. We have a good relationship. But if I had this type of background, they wouldn't be giving me advice about art or dating or things of that nature. It just seems weird.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, any good reporter, you want to draw out your sources, you want to build relationships, you ask, hey, how's your kid doing? How's your wife doing? Sure. But this goes to another level. I mean, the relationship he had with these 2 reporters in particular, Michael Wolff, famous author of several books. In particular, he's probably most famous for the book he's written about the Trump administration, in the first Trump administration. And then another reporter, Landon Thomas Jr. for the New York Times. These relationships were truly unusual. With Michael Wolff is giving him all sorts of advice. I mean, once some stories start to come out, really revealing the depths of Epstein's abuse and the way he was able to really kind of get the justice system to bend to his will, Michael Wolff is strategizing with him. Here's your media rollout. Here's your media strategy. I mean, that's something that normally you have to pay a PR consultant for. A guy who's writing supposedly objective journalistic books isn't the person who's giving you that advice. I mean, that's just not appropriate. They're feeding him information. They're giving him a heads up about, hey, these guys are writing a book about you, and we're telling them you're such a swell guy. I mean, this is just not normal relationships you have with journalists. And listen, you see in the emails why they're doing it. Michael Wolff is getting introductions from Epstein. Epstein is reportedly introducing him to Tom Barrack, current ambassador, longtime Trump supporter, and was the head of fundraising for Trump's inauguration the first time around. He's introducing him to a former Obama administration lawyer in the White House. So you see what they're getting out of it. Landon Thomas, the Times reporter, is saying, "Hey, can you confirm is Mnuchin going to be the Treasury Secretary?" They're getting information, but they're also letting a lot of important stories pass. I mean, they're talking to him about, hey, what do you know about various allegations about President Trump, about other people, and he kind of brushes them off, and they say, okay, great, let's move on, let's make a joke, And and then eventually, and this is not in the email, but eventually Landon Thomas says to him, "Hey, can you give $30,000 to support the preschool my kids go to?" This is not a normal relationship.
Well,
by any stretch of the imagination.
It strikes me it is a sort of. I would tend to disagree in a certain way. I would say it is a normal relationship between a controller and an asset.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that from that perspective, yeah, it's an absolutely normal relationship. I think the issue here, and I think the issue, I would say, is actually more on the side of the reporters. Is as a reporter, you're supposed to know where to draw the line. You're supposed to know. We have rules about not taking gifts from sources, about not trying to give the perception that you're being influenced by someone who you're going to be writing about. And these guys just blow past any sort of thoughts about that. There's no thought about are they drawing any sort of lines? And I think that's important. That's what separates objective journalism from someone who's basically just working on someone else's behalf to do PR for them.
Right. So they're going to release all these emails, right? There's lots of hearsay in the emails. So tell our audience, because you're in an email, that doesn't necessarily mean you're guilty. And I'm interested just because everybody's on an email. And, when they do investigations too, it's a very wide net, right? What would you tell our audience when they are reading articles about this or hearing it on talk radio or cable? What should they look for? Just because someone's name is mentioned doesn't mean they were guilty of anything.
No, absolutely. I think that I think that what I was looking for was not so much is this person in an email, but what is the relationship?
Right.
I think there's a difference. There are people who might have had legitimate reason to be in contact with Jeffrey Epstein. And if you have if you're doing a very specific thing that is clearly your job, there's nothing wrong. Even as a reporter, listen, as a reporter, I'm going to be on the phone with people who are accused of all sorts of terrible crimes. That doesn't mean that, I'm palling around with them. And listen, I'm going to try to talk to them to make them feel comfortable. But again, I'm going to know where that line is between I'm trying to get information out of you and, I'm your friend and I'm going to give you advice. I'm not going to give them legal advice about how to handle their case. That to me is a big distinction. But I think this is the $1 million question everyone always says. You see all these names and all these big names, and you say, "Well, how come I'm not seeing any criminal charges? What's going on here?" And I think it's one thing that I always think about is effectively there's sort of two courts, right? There's the criminal courts and the civil courts. Let's say there's the real courts, and then there's the court of public opinion. And when things like these emails come out, most of the time we're not going to see anything that would lead someone to being sent to the criminal courts, but we are going to see consequences in the court of public opinion. Just this week, Larry Summers,
right,
former Treasury Secretary, Harvard is distancing themselves from him. And that's, I think, the realistic consequence we're going to see from these revelations.
How many Larrys do we see in the next year based on the Epstein? Is there dozens, 2
I think
dozens?
There's going to be many. We wrote about another academic, Noam Chomsky, very famous academic, and his cozy relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Obviously, there's the journalists that we've written about. There's various political operatives, the top lawyer for Goldman Sachs. There's a lot of people who are in that same boat with these relationships that look pretty bad now when you're reading these emails a few years later. So I do think I do expect to see more of those consequences emerge. One of the things I'm really interested, I will say though, about the next potential release, the Epstein files release from the Department of Justice. There's always been this question about how Jeffrey Epstein made his money.
Right.
And we know that he made a lot of money. He was a very wealthy guy. He had a lot of really wealthy clients. Well, what was he doing for them exactly? And did anyone ever investigate that? Because there's been theories that, was he helping some of these clients avoid taxes, do other sorts of fancy financial shenanigans that might not have been on the right side of the law? And, did the Department of Justice ever look into that? That's a question I have. Because sometimes, think about it. Famously, Al Capone, he went to prison for his taxes. Sometimes you get people with the crimes you can pin on them. And for someone like Jeffrey Epstein, maybe it would be easier to pin a financial crime on him than some of the sex crimes, because, if there's not a video of what happened, it can sometimes get into a sort of he said, she said, even though ultimately, when you've got, thousands of she's, that's a little bit of a different equation. But still, if you had potential charges you could pin on the guy for doing illegal financial things and some of his friends, were you pursuing that? I mean, that's a basic question I have, and I don't think we've ever really gotten an answer on.
No, and that is something that would be very interesting to see, because there is a road there. After 2009, what was Trump's relationship with him that we know so far? I mean, that's obviously what's on everybody's mind. I mean, Trump kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago when? I mean, I don't think that's disputed. When did he kick him out?
What we've heard is mid-2000s. I mean, we've never gotten an explicit date, but certainly before this, and everything that we've always heard has been that it was really before he was even being investigated. In the case of Epstein, certainly before he was ever convicted of anything. So yeah, his relationship with him is over. But it's interesting because, if you look at these emails, I mean, Trump is front and center in so many.
Oh yeah, he's obsessed with them.
100%. And I think he is presenting himself as kind of this guy who just understands Trump. Whether that's true or not, that's how he's sort of presenting it. I mean, and you can understand it. I mean, listen, if one of your old friends suddenly becomes president, well, yeah, you're probably going to be talking about that a lot. You're probably going to be saying, "Oh yeah, me and Jim go back years. Oh yeah, I know all sorts of things about Jim." But I get it, but yeah.
But also in terms of the services he was providing, whatever they might have been beyond the girls, that's a service that those people in his circles would have been seeking, because they didn't know Trump, or his people or the people around him didn't know how to deal with him, and were were desperately seeking people who thought they could.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by how much you mentioned him, and I view it this way, because we all know people, you know people. When someone gets obsessed with you, they just bring up everything about you they think they know or do, and so I'm looking for actually some concrete facts on this, because I mean, look. This is all of a sudden a big deal, sadly. I've been following the Miami Herald reporting on this for years. I have been fascinated by it. But, Trump obviously makes it. We live in a Trump world, right? Everything's bigger right now, bigger, better, right? So I'm really interested what, I would say anything Epstein says about anybody, I would take with a grain of salt.
100%. I mean, this is a guy who clearly would always boast. And, he was palling around with scientists pretending he was their equal. I mean, he was not. He was a smart guy, right. But I mean, he wasn't. He didn't have PhDs in every single academic discipline. This was a guy who liked to brag, who liked to talk about how great he was. He had obviously a very high opinion of himself, and so absolutely, I would take the Trump stuff with a grain of salt in terms of what he said about him. I mean, listen, he knew the guy. He knew him at some point for sure. And obviously there was a point at which they seemed to spend a decent amount of time together, but to suggest that means he knows everything about Trump, I don't think so. In the same way that, frankly, if he was saying the same thing about Bill Clinton, I'd have questions about it.
Right.
I mean, I think this guy overstated what he knew about people all the time.
As all con men do. Right?
Exactly.
That's a trait of a con man. Bill, by the way, folks, the Miami Herald, follow Bill. Ben, follow Ben at the Miami Herald. They are really the pioneers on Epstein. Everybody else is Johnny come lately on this. Miami Herald has been breaking this. I would recommend you subscribe or at least get the articles. I cannot stress that enough. Ben, what should we be looking for over the next couple of months on these document releases, and what's to come still?
I'm interested to see what's there, and I'm also interested to see what's not there, because already there's stuff coming out about the loopholes people might be trying to use to avoid releasing things. But I want to know, what leads did you not pursue? We know, for example, already they said a few years ago that there was a whole plan for how they were going to arrest Epstein in more than a decade earlier. They were going to go to a beauty pageant. They had it all lined up. They were going to do this, and they didn't do it. What are the other missed opportunities we have here? Because we know that he continued to abuse girls. When he didn't face consequences, he just kept doing it. And so you got to think about how many girls' lives were ruined because of these missed opportunities. That's what I'm thinking about.
And he became brazen.
Oh,
I mean, 100%. He knew he's under my. That's the amazing thing about it. He felt so untouchable that he continued this. He knew he was under a microscope. I don't think he's dumb.
I mean, the guy was technically a registered sex offender. Listen. You would think if you're a registered sex offender, people are going to be paying attention. You'd think you would not be just flaunting what you're doing, but that didn't stop him. He continued to do this up until the very end. I mean, we know that. So it is remarkable. I think he really did believe thought his money and his power meant that he couldn't be touched. And eventually it all caught up with him. But along the way, how many lives did he ruin? I mean, that to me is is what I think about when I think about this stuff. And that's why I really want to see what are the missed opportunities.
Ben, do you have kids, nephews?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So using the Jeffrey Epstein as the example, what is the moral tale you're telling your kids about how important is who you hang out with? I mean, there's a real lesson here, right?
I mean, it's the thing about Epstein, you ever watch a nature show and you see how lions hunt,
Right.
They find the weakest animal. And that's what Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, that's what they were doing. They were finding kids who came from troubled backgrounds, who didn't have a strong set of parents, or even just one parent, whatever,
Right.
but who didn't have parents who were checking in on them every day, who had some sense of what was going on in their lives. And it's tragic. I mean, it's tragic to think about that. These are, but that's what they were doing. It was kind of like, they heard that a kid was coming from a broken family, and it was like suddenly they started salivating. I mean, it's disgusting, but it's sad reality.
Unbelievable. Ben Wieder, thank you so much. We're going to have you back on as long as you're willing to follow up on all the new information that keeps coming out on this case. You've been doing amazing work on all of the Epstein stuff, so thank you so much for joining us. We also want to thank our previous guests, Carolyn Downey and Daniel Martino. They were both fantastic, so everyone, we really appreciate having them on the program. If you're not, folks, go to breakingbattlegrounds.vote. Sign up for the podcast portion. Make sure you get all that extra content. We're on Substack, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your favorite podcast. Breaking Battlegrounds is there. And make sure you're tuning in next week for our Thanksgiving special. Never want to miss that one. Thank you so much. We'll see you real soon.
I say this every election cycle, and I'll say it again. The 2024 political field was intense, so don't get left behind in 2025. If you're running for office, the first thing on your to-do list should be securing your name on the web. With a yourname.vote domain from GoDaddy.com, you'll stand out and make your mark. Don't wait. Get yours today.
Ho, 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 ho. What do you get when you mix cocoa, candy canes, and strong Wi-Fi signals? You get a podcast. That's right, Santa has a podcast. I'm telling stories from the North Pole, sharing elf updates, and answering your questions. And yes, spilling some holiday secrets. It's festive, it's fun, and fueled entirely by cookies. Tune in wherever you get your podcast. It's Santa Has a Podcast. Just press play.
All right, welcome to the podcast portion of Breaking Battlegrounds. We're going to lead it off with everyone's fan favorite, Kylie's Corner. What's our murder and mayhem for today? Unfortunately, this is a morning when we woke up to murder again.
Yeah.
I mean,
I wasn't going to talk about that today.
Well, I'm just throwing that in there because what's going on in Sudan and across Africa right now is heinous.
Yeah.
And it's real.
It's horrible.
And no one wants to admit to it. But go ahead, give us the lighthearted Kylie's Corner murder and mayhem, Kylie.
Murder and mayhem in a world of sin and oh, Kylie's on a roll. Kylie's got a corner and she's gonna start spilling out all the true crime in the world we're living in. So come and take a spin and listen in.
Well, I'm going to use a quote that Ben just said, our last guest. He said, when he didn't face consequences, he kept doing it. And that's exactly what happened 2 days ago in Phoenix at a elementary school. There was a 25-year-old man, Abel Kai Blah, that's his name. He entered Orangewood Elementary School in Phoenix following a student who was buzzed in by the front office, okay? He has no association with the school. He just lives nearby. Less than 1,000 feet nearby.
And they didn't stop him as he's just following in the
Yes, they did not stop him. He then convinced a 10-year-old girl that he was a doctor and that he needed to perform an exam on her and lured her into a classroom where he then started to sexually assault her. And she was able to escape him and ran for help. And that's when he also ran. But the thing about this story is he was just released from prison or jail 2 weeks prior to this he's a registered sex offender, but he's able to live less than 1,000 feet from this school. And what had happened was he was registered as like a class 2 instead of a class 3. And so class 3 is where they actually have to live less than 1,000 feet. But he took a plea deal. He was actually trafficking, I'm putting this in quotes because it says alleged, but like, because he took a plea deal.
He was trafficking
kids across the border.
Really?
And he took a plea deal and got almost 3 years in jail, and was just released and immediately did this 2 weeks later.
These type of people who rape kids, castration or death is my answer. I mean,
look, you know folks in the Phoenix Police Department. I had a friend in another state that was the top public defender for 25 years. That was his job, and he did mostly capital cases. And we went to college together, and he was pretty conservative. He's still conservative, but like he's changed on the death penalty and so forth because he just thinks there's tons of errors all the time. But I said, what is the one crime that you do not see any rehabilitation on? And he said, these children sexual abusers. He goes, they don't. He goes, I have never seen them rehabilitate.
Yes,
I've never heard of such a thing.
And he just felt like they just need to stay in.
Yes.
Yeah, but he pled guilty. So he took the plea deal, pled guilty to sexual conduct with a minor, and then the sex trafficking and luring of a minor were both dismissed. But in what world?
Why would they dismiss it?
Exactly. And in what world are we only classifying him as a level 2 versus a level 3?
Well, and this is the problem with our system overall, is that treats all crimes the same when it comes to making pleas and these sorts of things. It's just get a conviction because the prosecutor's only interested in their win-loss rate so they can go get a nice job with a big defense firm and make a bundle of money. I mean, there's the problem. And, there are certain crimes I do not believe in plea deals.
I think this is one.
This is one. I believe murder is one.
Bring it to a jury.
Yeah.
Now, I understand. The one thing I do understand about this, and I want to get back to Kylie, is, traumatizing the kids who've been through this. Mm-hmm. I think that's always been part of the Epstein saga's problem, is you had these young women who are truly traumatized. And so how do you, as a prosecutor, balance putting them in a downward spiral more versus getting justice? It's a tough call, and I'm glad I don't have to make it.
I'm glad. I think we're all glad we don't have to make it. But my take on that would be that, listen, the industry of psychology has gotten way the heck off the rails, right? They're no good anymore at rebuilding people, and you got to get back to that. But you've got to take the tough. You got to take the tough road on this stuff, because if you don't, it's what we were talking about. Mm-hmm. When these things are allowed to keep happening, they keep happening. They'll continue doing them. The only way you stop people is with hardcore visible deterrence.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, you brought up bring it to a jury.
Yes.
And then last night, I participated in the jury experience, which was here in Phoenix.
You served on a jury yesterday?
No.
I wish.
She came so riled up in here this morning about it.
Yeah, so I saw an Instagram ad called The Jury Experience, and I've only been called to jury once, but the case was like, I didn't even have a jury that day, so I didn't have to report or whatever it was. It was dismissed. And I was kind of sad about it because I want to participate in one.
I was so excited last time I got that text. I'm like, yes!
Yeah. So I signed up for this. It's called The Jury Experience. Dragged my friend along, dragged my husband along. And it was like a play where they acted out a case, and in the audience we had our phones and you could vote on different things and you were the jury. And so the case was kind of annoying. The case was really annoying. They could have done a better one. But it was a self-driving car swerved out of the way for an oncoming car that was driving the wrong way, and they hit a biker. So they put the owner of the self-driving car, or of the company, on trial and charged him for the murder of the biker, saying he was responsible for the self-driving car.
By the way, I do know for a fact that is totally false and opposite of the programming that the states have required these vehicles to have. They will accelerate into a vehicle before they hit a pedestrian or biker.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
They're programmed to do that.
Well, she felt this was basically a social experiment.
I felt like I was in a social experiment.
Like you were a rabbit being watched by scientists.
Oh, it's going around the country. So this has to be some type of...
it's incredibly likely the CIA funded this operation you just participated in. Congratulations, guinea pigs.
No, literally. The opening statements, they had us vote, based on the opening statements, there's some kind of stat that jury already has their mind made up after the opening statement. And it was an 80-20 vote. 80 found him not guilty, because it was the wrong way driver's fault for making they were in the wrong, in my opinion. And then it ended up being like 78-32 at the end after we heard both arguments. But what threw me off was two things. The jury, I'm putting us, the audience, the jury, we were able to vote on the questions that they asked the defendant. And one of the options was he created the self-driving company because his dad went blind, and so he wanted a way for his dad to still get around because he could no longer drive. So one of the questions was, if your dad was the biker, would you have sent the cars through more testing? Or the other question was, do you believe as the owner of this company, you should go above and beyond the law in order to ensure the safety of these cars? It was like 25 of us voted for the dad question. That's a personal question. That's what you want to hear from. Like if he had said no or yes, I would have done more testing because it was my dad. That would have maybe changed my opinion. But like 75 voted for the question of should you have gone above and beyond the law? And I'm like, who would vote for that? His answer is going to be, no, I was within the law.
Yeah.
Who would vote for that? Apparently my jury that I was with, my peers.
Yeah.
He was within the law the entire time. So he's like, I'm not the government. I don't make the laws.
How long was this exercise?
It was like an hour and 20 minutes. And I was like, and then at the end, the judge gave us a speech because we all found him not guilty. Like 78% of us found him not guilty. And she gave us a speech of, well, in this day and age, we need to start considering who is at fault for the self-driving cars.
That's why I'm saying this was you were part of an actual experiment.
I think I was.
Yes.
I was like,
so they were literally disappointed that you guys were all using your common sense.
But I'm like, this wasn't even close. Obviously, it was the wrong way driver's fault. But I was kind of fired up after leaving. I'm like, I wanted a murder case.
Well, first of all, you found out about this on social media, so I'm not.
I fell for the ad.
Sam and I are not feeling too sorry for you and wasting your time on that.
So if you see the jury experience, that's the case. So figure, don't waste your time.
Interesting.
I'm assuming it's going to be the same case around the country.
Let me ask you: do you have another story, or I want to talk about one thing about Epstein?
No, that's for this week.
How long do you think this Epstein saga continues? Obviously, there will be other stories replacing it, but are we years away from this?
We're years away, but the public will have moved on in a few weeks.
Well, they'll move on as soon as they find out Trump was not visiting with young girls. I mean, that's all this is about now. Right. I mean, so one thing I like to do for our social media.
Well, the left will move on the minute
the one thing I like. Well, they're starting to now is they're getting tagged.
Because
right, but
because
the one
they're finding out their people were. This is where like Hakeem Jeffries is like, release the files.
No. It's like when I was telling him. This is very much an eyes wide shut. This goes and proves everybody who thinks that this is a cesspool. I always go and when people ask me about it, I'm just like, well, no, they're all good. There are good motivations. I like to still think the best. I think most do go there that way, but it is a cesspool now.
Yeah.
And this absolutely feeds it. And like I was using that 30 Rock, it's a great thing because Jack Donaghy, the head of it, is always right about things. And so Liz thought she had him. And she goes, that's the worst part. You proved him right. And so all our friends on the right, who we all view as aluminum foil around their head, you're like, this only proves they're right. Like, you're just, they call it the uniparty, right? You're just one big cesspool of corruption and in it for your own selves, right?
Which is...
And frankly, no member of Congress should leave office with his net worth increasing tens and 20s and $30 million. That is something, there is something so wrong about that, and no one's that good of an investor.
Well, it's obviously fraudulent. It is all the legal insider trading that they're allowed to do. It is completely wrong.
And why is that just not done?
It's completely wrong.
No, but I'm interested on this. I think Trump has handled this wrong. I think he should have just said release it all, because I do not believe with any fiber of my soul that he was involved in trafficking or sleeping with these young girls. I think Donald Trump was a horn dog in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s.
Without a doubt, sure.
And the funny thing is, I think sometimes his closest allies seem to forget that we all know that, even those who voted for him. It's sort of like the Charlie Sheen. I always use like Charlie Sheen. You know why Charlie Sheen still gets gigs? Because we all know what he is, because he's honest about it. I am a dog.
Look, I think Trump, very interesting because it's so far off of the left media narrative. I grew up, obviously, as most folks know, in the Northeast. I did not like Donald Trump for all those years. Not his politics. I just didn't like the persona and the brash this and that. I think when you look at it for everything they've said, this is one of the most decent human beings who's served in high office in the presidency or that level in D.C. in a while. And it's weird to say that for me, actually, because he has lots of flaws. But if you think, and George Bush, I think, was a very decent man.
Yes.
But also someone who, like Trump, I mean, George Bush was not a decent man in his 20s and early 30s.
He was not.
He became a wonderfully decent man
100%
later in life. Reagan, I think, was a decent man throughout his life from what we've heard. But otherwise, there's a lot of dogs running around D.C., and Trump's, honestly, a lot cleaner than most of them.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting to see this. Like I said, we're going to have a couple more weeks of this. We'll see what comes out. You mentioned the part about there's a lot of redacted files because ongoing investigations, connections to the intelligence agencies.
Well, and that's a question we didn't get to ask Ben.
Ben alluded to the whole money trail. Yeah. That's going to answer a lot of this once you understand the money trail, right? Because it always is follow the money,
right?
You know, even when you go to fake jury trials.
I mean, I think this is sort of the danger. You sort of touched on with the insider trading for members of Congress. If you're allowed to insider trade within that big uniparty circle that we're kind of having to admit really truly does exist, it's real easy to make hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah. It really is. I mean, they're just handing vast wealth to people like Jeffrey Epstein who don't apparently have any grace that would earn it on their own.
Well, I'll tell you, all the major wealth out there now, I have really changed my tune on
estate taxes.
Estate taxes, yeah. I think if you work hard, but there's got to be a cap on it. We are creating generational wealth for people who have never done anything in their life,
right?
And they're just spending on things to actually demean what our values are as a country, demean our system of government that actually made them wealthy.
Well, and make it harder for people to follow the footsteps of the parents who earned that money that they now have.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
I agree. I'm at the point. I think like other than family farms, you set a limit at per person like $10 million, and that's it.
So as we wrap up this portion of the show for this week, and next week's our Thanksgiving show, very exciting, very exciting. What's your prediction on Epstein? What's the big discovery we're going to get on this?
I think the big discovery you're going to get is that it touches every Western and economic government on this planet. I mean, if your government is part of the World Economic Forum, he had his tentacles in your government too.
Yeah. Your prediction?
A prediction? I don't know, but
I mean, it could be something like, I think someone's be found free. Michael Wolff's, no one's going to believe a Michael Wolff book again. I mean, what are things you see?
Just the thing that I have been finding interesting is I love to read the comments on social media.
Yes.
That is like where the gold is. And I think the left will never believe that Trump's not involved.
No.
Regardless what's released, they'll say he redacted things. But my firm belief is they tried everything to take down Trump in this last election, and if there was any inkling that he did something, they would have used that against him.
I agree with you 100%. That's why I don't believe any of it, because they had 4 years of throwing everything and the kitchen sink at the man, and if they had something this tawdry, this evil, it would have been there, and they would have put a special counsel on it. I mean, trust me.
They tried to prosecute him by changing records retention laws after
by actually changing laws.
Changing laws.
Yeah.
They did it in New York. They did it with, so they repeatedly changed laws to target this guy. If they had documents where they could just throw them out and send him to jail, they would have done it.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you also why is another reason you know it. I mean, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton are not Donald Trump fans.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They have not made one paper accusation against him because they know. They've seen the stuff.
Right.
They know.
Right.
So I just, and Kylie, you make the great point, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what comes out about this. You're never going to convince the 40% who absolutely have lost their ever-living freaking minds about this guy.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's really interesting now. You're seeing some psychology articles coming out and saying how damaging this is for the people who have TDS. I mean, they're acknowledging that TDS is an actual syndrome.
And we will discuss it next week on our portion about the Thanksgiving episode about TDS, and it's splitting these families, and it's just weird.
I would love to get a psychologist on who's seen that, or a psychiatrist on.
We'll work on that.
Seen
That'd be a
that.
good one for January, February.
Obviously, they can't talk about their individual patients, but it'd be interesting to get some insight on it because, I can't stand Hillary Clinton. Joe Biden drove me nuts, but do you care enough to be mad about them all day long?
I never wake up thinking about it.
No.
The only time I think about it when she posts some idiotic message that's in an interview that she posts. A woman doesn't cross my mind till someone brings her up.
I spend more time on an average day ticked off at a driver in front of me than I do politics.
I spend more time being upset about Arizona professional sports teams than I do
far.
anything else. So anyway, folks,
Chuck, you had to throw that in.
Folks, thank you for visiting this week. We hope you'll share the show. Of course, you can always catch us wherever you get your podcasts or visit us at breakingbattlegrounds.vote or subscribe to Substack. Have a great weekend.